decided to build a game studio around this idea of taking sort of elegant, sort of well-designed games with simple gameplay and making them one. So I think there's a lot of games, a lot of companies that we launch, and we have a great network of influencers, people that have high social media presence, strong social media presence, or press friends that will write about things. So that happens for most of our product launches. The thing that's interesting is when you have a product that really resonates, is you might get the same amount of exposure that we've gotten otherwise, but the result is much greater. So all of a sudden it sort of takes on a life of its own. And that's what happened with Dots. So we launched it, our network of influencers talked about it, that got it out to a pretty large set of people, maybe 20, 30,000 people. And then those people started talking about it. And then within that group, there was a set of influencers, celebrities, people with really, really large followings, and then it just it literally just took off from underneath us. So I think the honest answer to the question, I think we wanted to build a game that we wanted to play. And I think a lot of the games out there were great games and they were fun and addictive, but they never quite felt like our game. And so I think Patrick kind of had this inspiration from a Japanese artist, Kusama, and he translated that into a game, and all of a sudden I think for a lot of people, including myself, it just felt like this was our game. And so I think what we want to do is make more games like that are inspired by other things. It could be architecture, it could be scenery, classic art, music. And so we think we can, as long as we sort of stick to this inspiration-driven game development, that I think we'll have a lot of things that are kind of like Dots, but that look very different. I think it's a very simple gameplay. So I think, for a casual game to take off, you need it to be immediately comprehensible. So when you see an image of it, you understand what it is you're going to do. But a lot of the deeper games that are, they describe them as like mid-core or core games, which are the kinds of games that people will spend significant money on. They'll rearrange their social calendar around matches. I mean, like very intense. Those games really suck you in, and they go very, very deep. But they're often pretty intimidating when you first look at them. And you have to invest a lot of time.
There's a learning curve to play.
Yeah, exactly. It's a learning curve. And that's part of what makes it really exciting if you go through that learning curve. For us and what we were building at Dots, everything is something you can quickly pick up and you understand it immediately. We never wanted to make a tutorial for the game. The kind of thing where you had to click through. You see on the screens where it says tap here, tap here, tap here. We felt like if we had to do that, then we've kind of missed the mark. It should be instantly understandable, and maybe there's some things that you learn over time, but the basic gameplay you should just sort of be able to pick up and understand it. Yeah, intuitive, approachable. We didn't want it to feel like a game necessarily. A lot of the games, maybe have more like a children's animation inspiration or like a Vegas casino inspiration. And so we didn't want this to feel like either of those, but the kind of game that those people could play too. There's so a few of the differences. We obsess about the animation in the game. We've got one person that their sole job, and they're incredible at it, is to make the animations on the map screen really vivid and interesting and fluid. And that's the kind of thing that people, when people think about the game, that sense of longing that you have for a game, that's what they think about. And so I think a lot of games, they might spend more energy thinking about monetization, how to make money from it, or virality, how to get other people to play it.
Right.
I think the things that we obsess about is the gameplay. It's very fluid. The dots bounce a certain way, and that'll translate into other games when we make them. But also, how do the animations come to life, and do they feel, really interesting for you? Yeah. So in the gaming world, one of the metrics that's really important is retention, and sort of as a game studio, we obsess about retention. How many people that come into the game on day one will come back in on the second day, and the 7th day, and the 30th day. And so those metrics, there's industry standards for them. There's targets that people want to hit. And so we've done really, really well at retention. And we do very well with word of mouth. pretty good at monetization, but we don't solve for that. So we're trying to build a long-term brand and a long-term experience, and so we think that means that today it means we maybe make some trade-offs on short-term revenue in exchange for building something that people come back to more often. So another way of thinking about it is Dots was almost like a circular gameplay. There's no end state, and 2 Dots is a journey. And what we're trying to do is make the game that has the journey kind of go on as like a long-term quest, so you never actually finish it. But hypothetically, if there was an end, we may not expect you to go back there and play it again. Just like, you know, your favorite book, you might read a second time, probably not a third and a fourth and a fifth time. So that one is really important for us. We're making a mass market product. So I think that's something that we wanted to design for on day one. It was the kind of thing that my 5-year-old nephew or my 80-year-old grandmother could play. And it might feel and mean different things to them, but it is applicable to everyone. So that's from like an age demographic. The other is from this sort of cultural, you know, differences. And we felt like it was really important for our games to translate all over the world. And so a lot of the big game studios, they'll make games that are very narrative, and or they'll create sort of heavy character reference, which have to really be altered to go to different markets around the world. Yeah, and I mean, I think all the credit for that really goes to the designers. I mean, Patrick, who designed the first game, obsessed about the color scheme, the palette. And the designers and illustrators in the second game did the same, and it was a very long process to make sure it sort of felt right in the end. And that one's more complicated because we continue to add new content, new levels. And so there's always a new color palette that we have to add in there. I mean, I think the hard thing about monetizing is there's a few ways you can do it. You can trick people into paying you. And that's certainly an approach.
Like, people hate in-app purchase these days, right?
So I think they hate bad in-app purchases. I think it's just like if you go out and get food, and every time you get food, it's bad food, you're going to be like, I hate getting food. Or I hate going to restaurants, because every time I go to a restaurant, the food's bad. But every once in a while you have a good experience, and it feels like it was worth it. And I think what the bar we set for ourselves is we want to make things that you can buy, where you feel like you're getting some value out of it. It's hard to sort of translate value into a feature in a game. But the way we think about it is games are all about delighting you, giving you fun, and sort of a fun experience. And so if we're going to sell you something, we want it to be useful, because you're trying to compete some objective. But we also want it to be fun. And so visually, aesthetically, the sounds that it makes, the way it animates on the screen. And so when we release something that you pay for, we try to obsess about that, make sure that that's all in there. So I think we nurture and help at the betaworks level further down the road. Because there's a lot of, I think the thing that a lot of startups I think don't realize, and it took me a few failed startups to realize this, is there's so many inflection points along the way of building a company. And a lot of people think, if I can just get my Series A funding, then I can get to Series B and then Series C. But the hurdles get bigger and bigger and bigger each time. And the business challenges you face get more complex. And so it's not just about getting it off the ground. Being helpful on the way can really make a difference between a company like succeeding and having a good outcome or not. So betaworks has a media focus. Everything is of or relating to the media landscape. So that's why we can think about things like weather products and gaming and news, all part of the media world. So with that as a backdrop, specifically we focus on products that use real-time data and social as kind of part of the fabric. And so we build a lot of companies around the Twitter ecosystem. We built a lot of companies that use large amounts of big data, like Bitly. Bitly still shortens, I think, a third of the internet's links. So it's a real big data company. Or sort of one where social is woven directly into the product. And that's, Dots has elements of that. Dots actually has a lot of data powering the marketing of our games. And so there's usually those three components, real-time, social, and data, are very